everyone. Welcome to Series 33, Space Environment, Ethics and Earth-Space Sustainability with our very esteemed guest today, Dr. Andreas LOSCH. He's a research and consultant on space sustainability, and Dr. Sao Shanya, an environmental social scientist at EWAC. Today's show will be a little bit different. It'll be only 44 minutes. And today's moderator is our Space for Women show team member, and Malak Trabelsi-Loeb. She's an international business law and space law and entrepreneur. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Malak.
Thank you so much, Hen. I welcome today our esteemed guest, and I welcome our audience also to have this show on sustainability on Earth and beyond. And I welcome Dr. Andreas LOSCH. He's an award-winning theologian currently associated with the University of Pretoria, specializing in the dialogue with the sciences and with philosophy. He coordinated the project Life Beyond Our Planet at the Center of Space and Habitability, CSH, Bern, and worked as an independent researcher and lecturer affiliated with the theological faculty at the University of Bern on ethics of planetary sustainability. Welcome, Dr. Andreas, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Malak. I'm happy to be here on the show, and I just jump into my slides. So I will talk about space environment ethics. For me, ethics means asking good questions in this context. So what is space environment ethics about? These days, we go for space. We live in a time of Space 4.0, as it is called by European Space Agency, where public and private operators work together while going for space. So we have space agencies and companies who offer space tourism already and about to be realized as well. We have thousands of satellites orbiting the Earth. So Luxembourg invests in plans for space mining, and the European Space Agency is considering a moon village. On top of that, of course, we now have the Artemis project by NASA. The first woman on the moon is scheduled to be there soon. And this comes with accords to try to offer a framework for the operations in space. But there are also challenges for this, what's happening. Because how can we do this in a sustainable manner? That's the question. So should we use resources for tourism actually, and how many and for which purpose? There's a lot of space debris out there. This is what you see is an artist's impression of the satellites. It's of course oversized, but it's still getting full there. And there could be the Kessler syndrome happening when there's a chain reaction and things get worse in the lower Earth orbit. When we have public-private cooperations in space, in which interest are things happening? We should ask questions about this, and transparency, ask for transparency in this regards. And can space mining actually be performed sustainable, I ask. So let's have a look at this last one as an example. Sustainability has 4 dimensions in my understanding. It's the economic dimension, the environmental, a social, and a cultural one. So economic would be, let's apply this on space mining immediately. Economic would be, the original idea would be that a forest regrows and you only harvest it as fast that it can regrow again. So when there are plenty of asteroids, there's plenty to harvest, but asteroids don't regrow. So already here we have a problem of the term. And we should think about that. Then there are environmental concerns. There's a lot of debris, as already talked about, and there will be more debris when space mining. And on Moon, which is the first target for space mining now, there's a lot of dust, of course. Already the Apollo mission had to work with that. And we have to consider that. On top, if you go farther into the solar system, we don't know if there might be microbial life out there somewhere. And then you would have the problem of contaminating Earth. So this is an issue of so-called planetary protection, which is important. There are social questions. Who would profit from the revenues of space mining? Would it be the rich countries only again, or is it space for all and all profit? And then there's a cultural dimension. Does science have a say? Is it only economic driven? And what about heritage sites? Actually, the Artemis Accords take care that the own moon landing site is of course protected, but things like that, we need to think about protected sites in the solar system as well. So let's have a look at the Outer Space Treaty, which is the legal foundation of what's happening in outer space. Just at the very first lines of it. It says that the exploration and use of outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development, and shall be the province of all mankind. Sounds very good, and it goes on. Outer space shall be free for exploration and use by all states. So space for all, basically. But what is the use? If you extract resources from space, is this just a good use? So is recovery integrated in the question of use, or is this a claim? Because a claim would be forbidden by the Outer Space Treaty, and there are divergent interpretations. And one has to be aware of this, and this is a big issue. Although there are, as I've shown, there are legal challenges, I think it's very important to find agreements and to go forward and to go into space, because we have a situation which I will show very soon. Just to end this with the Outer Space Treaty, I think it's important to ask for a revision of the question of property in the Outer Space Treaty. It's not only me who asked for this. So my idea is about a planetary version of sustainability. Here you see Earth from space, Italy it is. It's very beautiful, lighted, but it's also a lot of energy used there. So we already see in this picture that we need to take care about our resources for the future. And the idea of sustainability is that it is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And those who suffer most if this wouldn't be met are, of course, the poor people, not the rich ones. This is also already integrated in this Brundtland Commission definition, which is the foundation of the modern sustainability dialogue. So one important aspect is, of course, to look for the economic, environmental, and social sustainability. But we also, of course, need peace, because we could end our life here on Earth ourselves if we don't take care like that. But there are also other threats which we can't master so easily. And this is, for instance, one. There could be an asteroid hitting Earth, like it happened with the dinosaurs, and actually that is relatively new. So we need to think about planetary defense and use technology to monitor the situation. And there's also already a mission taking, let's say, exploring the opportunities there are to work in this, to work against this threat. But as this could happen to us, I think if you want to really have a sustainable future, we need to think about going into outer space, because without our expansion of our instruments and people into space, humanity could conceivably perish. We need to go for space. Finally, because the sun is growing. It takes millions of years, of course, but at one point it will simply be too hot here and the sun will swallow Earth. It's a lot of time, but we also need a lot of time to get into space, I'm sure. So if you want to have a really sustainable sustainability, so to say, a planetary one, then you need to consider space. You can't ignore it. So the first principle I derive from that is that later generations should be able to meet their own needs without perishing due to events in our solar system. And we need all dimensions of sustainability to last as long as possible. But we also need a technological imperative to develop into space. Then we need to think about planetary protection of outer space resources and habitats. And we need to do all of this in a responsible manner. So we need to act so that the effects of our action are compatible with the permanence of genuine human life. I quote Hans Jonas, a famous philosopher here. This is the idea of the core principles of planetary sustainability as I understand it, but there's a little bit more. The question is human life actually enough? Hans Jonas asked if the biosphere itself maybe has something of a moral claim on us, not only for our ulterior sake, but for its own and in its own right. So the UN are very good at putting humanity at the forefront, which is a good thing, but anthropocentrism, putting humans first, can also be a problem if you consider the whole ecosystem. So there are other environmental ethical stances as well. For instance, sentientism, that everything that can suffer has a moral status. Biocentrism, that all life is, well, sacred and has a moral status. And holism, that the whole system, the ecosystem, has a moral status of its own. You could go much into details here, but I just want to enlarge your thinking about the challenges we have, because it would lead us to ask that there may be a variety of life forms, not only humans could have moral status on Earth. And if one day we meet extraterrestrial life, be it microbes on Europa or whatever, how do we deal with that? How do we cope? How do we relate to this encounter? And it leads to far-reaching questions like the questions, what is life? For instance, there's a Gaia hypothesis, which is very hypothetical, but it's the idea that Earth is a planet, a living planet, is a living being somehow itself. Well, lots of questions to ponder. I promised you questions. I don't provide you with the answers because I think we have to find them together. But as being said, you see the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. They already include life on land, goal 15, life below water, climate action, but one thing is missing. And if we want to integrate the space into the global dialogue, we need an 18th SDG, I'm convinced, for space environment. We need to integrate these discourses, not only to think from the space sector, how can we help Earth, but also to think in the global, the earthly discussion, so to say, what role does space play for us? In the 2030 agenda, you have 5 tenets: planet, people, prosperity, peace, and partnership. It resembles for me very much the sustainability dimension. It's like the ecological, the social, the economic, and maybe a political and global one. And there's, of course, somewhere the cultural dimension, which is a bit vague, but for me, that's what's missing else. But this is not enough for me. We need to think beyond the globe. We need to think about the planet, about its environment. That is not just a globe in your living room, but it's a planet in the universe. So the planetary sustainability for me includes the environment. We looked at this on Earth for a long time. As being said, it could be a globe in your living room. But this is already a very old idea. And already in the 13th century, from which this drawing was taken, people knew the Earth as a globe. So I tried to change. It was the first image you saw was once my logo, and said, okay, we need more space environment around Earth. But then I realized, well, Earth does not float in an empty void, but is part of a universe. And this actually looks like another old drawing, the Aristotelian worldview, where you have Earth in the center, the planetary spheres around. It's too much Earth-centered again. So to have a really planetary perspective, and that is why I chose the picture I chose, is to have a look at the beauty of our planet and see beyond it into space. That's my idea of planetary sustainability. It involves a paradigm change from globe to planet, I'm convinced. And I hope you're with me on this journey. If you want to read more, there's a lot of literature I published. You can look it up, I think, later. And there's many of it is also already open access. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andreas, for the nice presentation. And it's a very impressive, and what we need to think more about and get it into the international academia is, like we talked before, multidisciplinary researches in order to grasp all these aspects together and work on them in PhDs and in research centers and so on. And actually, humanity looked always at the heavens, what we call them always heavens before, and for inspiration, the inspiration and curiosity that moved humanity always to go forward, which evolved into ambitions to harness space. Today, our existence in space is a reality. So space is no longer the final frontier. It is also our hope. We have new way to evolve and to be protected from existential risks, and to also our hope to manage environmental issues and terrestrial issues and offer new economic means for social development everywhere. And our next esteemed guest will be addressing aspects of the environmental issues on Earth. Dr. Xiao Shan Yap, who is a scientist at the Environmental Social Sciences Department at EWAG in Switzerland, and a guest assistant professor at the Copernicus Institute of Sustainable Development of Utrecht University in the Netherlands. Dr. Yap was trained as a development economist during her PhD and began her research career by analyzing conventional manufacturing sector such as semiconductors, integrated circuits, followed by water and sanitation, as well as renewable energy like solar photovoltaics. In the last 2 years, her passion has brought her to venture into the emerging space sector, and her most recent focuses on how developing nations combat water-related crises, including mitigating freshwater scarcity, tackling the problem of unsafe drinking water and water pollution. Dr. Shan, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my ongoing work. I have recently started venturing into the space sector, but today I want to share with you how I basically perceive space sustainability from an environmental social science perspective, and how I see that there could be increasing relations between the Earth and space when it comes to sustainability. So a fundamental social science question has been about the moon versus the ghetto, asked by Richard Nelson in the 1970s. Essentially, he asked why we were able to send a man to the moon while we still had so many other problems, such as the problems of the ghetto on the Earth. And this is a very relevant question, especially when we ask social scientists. Obviously, on the Earth, we still have poverty and hunger issues. We have water and sanitation crisis that leads to public health crisis. And obviously, we also have climate change problems. And coming from the background of development economics and sustainability transitions research, these are the questions that we basically ask on a daily basis almost. And in the last 10 years, these are the questions that I have been asking myself. However, at the same time, we are also seeing new kinds of challenges that we haven't had in the past, like what Andreas have just told us about when it comes to outer space sustainability, such as space security issues or the collision of space debris. Meanwhile, as Andres has also brought up about new space economy, we can actually turn the new space technologies into kind of economic activities such as cleaning or commercializing space debris, in-orbit servicing, or even mining resources. So coming back to the question, the moon versus the ghetto, a usual answer that we had is that sending a man to the moon was an engineering problem, but solving the problems of the poor on Earth is a social and institutional problem, which is much more complex than a technological development problem. However, today, when we are talking about new space economy and protecting outer space sustainability, at least from my point of view, that this is no longer just an engineering problem, but it is also a social and institutional problem. And with that, I asked the question, are the two extremes finally gradually converging? Yeah. So with that, I would like to just share my current research plan, which I call Earth Space Sustainability. And what I try to do is that I tend to share with people that we have to legitimize an Earth-space relationship paradigm, because most of the time when we are still talking about outer space sustainability, it seems rather distant, probably not to the space community, but to people outside the space community, because they cannot immediately relate the relevance to them. And that goes from society to academia people or even makers. So first of all, we have to legitimize this Earth-space relationship paradigm. And this relationship has to be a sustainable one. And that we are talking about peaceful use of outer space, like what Andres talked about, a creation of an sustainable and inclusive Earth-space economy, and how we can actually deploy these new space technologies for the attainment of sustainable development goals. And lastly, it is also my research aim to contribute to that emerging space governance framework, where we could integrate more explicitly social science research into the problem of outer space sustainability in order to derive more strategic policy insight. So just to share with you a little bit, a core field that sustainability or environmental social scientists would look at is called sustainability transitions research. And by transition process, we basically like to start with asking the question how we can develop new industries or new technologies that are supposedly more sustainable or greener. And most of the time, these new technologies, they lack the performance and they lack cost competitiveness as compared to an existing well-established sector. And with that, we can look at the example of introducing renewable energy as compared to the old electricity sectors, for example. And most of the time, to develop these new greener technologies or industries, it comes with high number of implementation barriers. So the question is how we can actually transform entire sectors. And in relation to space sustainability, we are saying how we can actually transform space exploration and space economic activities into a more sustainable forms. And this would have to overcome resistance of incumbents with vested interest, with sunk cost, and also most of the time trying their very best to resist any disruptive innovations. And obviously we have resistance from users and other stakeholders and policymakers as well. A policy question that we will ask is basically called a mission-oriented innovation policy. And coming back to the example of old space sector, the logic of mission has been very much state-driven. So sending a man to the moon was driven by state political interest, and it was very much top-down. Whereas today, in order to transform the space sector, we need some sort of a new mission logic. In other words, space activities and governing space sustainability should be more decentralized, involving a broader set of actors, to keep it short. So in short, we are looking at how deep social-technical transformation can take place. In that sense, social-technical basically means not just technologies or new industries, but we are also looking at social and institutional aspects such as business models, norms, and regulations. So some of the current activities that I would like to share with you, I will go through this rather quickly. Basically, my research is currently looking at two sides of the sustainability issues. On one hand, Earth and climate observation, how we could actually deploy space technology for Earth sustainability. Whereas on the other hand, we are talking about how we can overcome space pollution challenges. So with that, I've started looking into Earth observation of Copernicus systems. And with that, we look at how to create an effective innovation system and to create new industries. With that, we do not look at just technologies, but also business, how to create new markets by legitimizing the use of Earth observation, for example, for agriculture purposes or for water resource management. So we have more of a systemic point of view to tackle. On the other hand, for space pollution, obviously, I will be talking and share with you a little bit more in just a bit about the problem of space debris. And with that, we look at legitimation problems. How do we legitimize space debris is a problem and a challenge to be taken seriously. What are the governance challenges? But I will go into this in just a bit. Some other new topics that I'm also exploring is satellite navigation systems, how we could use that for the right purposes and not for the wrongful purposes, and also other entrepreneurial competitions in the space sector. For example, should we do space tourism, or should we set up one single set of mega constellation for 5G internet, or should we have multiple several sets of competing mega constellations, which then fill the outer space with garbage again? So perhaps I will take the last few minutes to just share with you very quickly how I have tried to tackle the problem of space debris using a method called discourse network analysis. So basically, this method helps us to trace any discourses or concerned topics among different groups of actors in the field over time. And we could choose to trace this discourse or concerning topics based on a set of newspaper articles, or depending on our purposes, we could also do the same by tracing this in a set of policy reports, for example. So what I will share with you here is essentially on tracing these concerned topics through newspaper articles from 2007 to 2019. And obviously, we started with 2007 because of the collision and the following anti-satellite test that took place. So, as mentioned, we look at the year from 2007 to 2011 as the first period of time. And what we could derive is something called concept network. In other words, how concern and discourse topics can be related. And each time, for example, each time a certain actor in the field brought up a concern issue, how do they associate that with another concern issue? So how discourse and concern topics are related. And then we build a network out of it to derive a so-called concept network. And we look at different aspects for this space debris case. We look at the technology itself, which is called active debris removal. And we try to see any legitimation concerns over time. So legitimation can be understood as acceptance. So can people accept that space debris itself is a problem or not? And then we have other elements such as mitigation practices, governance approaches, and better management of space traffic. So I will not go too deep for this presentation, but just to share with you, the concept network that we can derive basically can be put onto a radar plot. And with that, you can see that in the first period of time when the first collision of space debris took place, ADR was at the center of discussion. So people were worried and mostly discussing about, should we even use new technologies like active debris removal? Do we want to send new machines into the outer space to clean up this so-called space debris? So the technology question was at the center of discussion in that period of time. And you can see that when people talk about active debris removal, the technology problem is closely related to other problems such as traffic management. Do we need centralized guidance among the national government? And if we don't start cleaning the space debris, we will start having financial problems, because when collision takes place, the financial cost that is lost is huge, and other problems such as that cause danger to other human carrying spaceships. So a very quick overview into the latest period of time in the last year, we see how this topic has basically evolved among these different stakeholders in the field as they express their concerns across the media, such as newspapers. And please do not try to read out of the figure, it's really cramped. But for the purpose of this presentation, I will now just zoom in a little bit. We can see that in the last year, following the announcements of companies like SpaceX, that they will shoot thousands of satellites into the Earth orbit in just the next few years, we see the problem of telecommunication move to the center of discussion. It really grabbed the attention of the society and the policymakers and other stakeholders. And this is still closely related to concerns for Kessler syndrome, others arguing that are we just damaging an illustration of the tragedy of the commons, but we have opposing actors as well saying that, oh no, too much regulations actually limit our development potentials. But at the same time, we also see new initiatives, new kinds of actors coming into the picture for the first time, like Clean Space, or also called Clear Space, which is the first clean space initiative awarded with a space debris cleaning mission by ESA. So essentially, we are able to see all these different kinds of social technical configurations over time concerning this space debris challenge using the method of DNA. So this is my last slide. We can basically, through DNA, identify norms and beliefs, understand how institutions can be established. This helps us to understand the key changing trends based on triggering events. We can better understand strategies, conflict, competing interests, and with that, we can derive more effective policy responses. So with that, I will end my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shan. I loved the part. I loved the whole presentation. The last part with the societal implication on seeing the way how they think about the space debris, it triggered me. It's very, very interesting because it's important to see what the public think about what's going on. It's very, very important. And actually from there, the policymaker need to shape the policies based on the compelling needs of the situation. For example, the compelling situation is to make space sustainability a priority before the economic aspect of the whole situation, because actually we've been driven always, humanity been driven always by the economic ends, you know, how we can achieve an impact from the economy, how we can have maximize the return on profits and so on. But here, when we look at it from this perspective, it's very important to see the societal perspective, to see what people think, to see the future generation, to input the sustainable development also concepts and rules, which is the inter and intra generational equity, which is very, very important to look at the use of outer space for the future generation. And Professor Andreas, he touched base on that. Having said that, I will move to the questions. And the first question is the current space law taken enough consideration of the ethical perspective?
I think you need ethics when there is not a detailed law regulation. You need it particularly strong. And as this is the situation, as the space law needs to develop further, much more, I think, and be updated to the situation happening today, I think we need ethics. So that's one thing. And of course, ethics also depends on where you come from. How do you view things, on your stance you take? And so we need a discussion, actually a discourse, basically. And I think it's very important that lawmakers and also law interpreters take part in this discussion. And for instance, in the collection I edited with the journal Global Sustainability, we have several legal contributions, also one from Luxembourg, by the way, which is very interesting, to show how they see the things happening.
Dr. Shan, do you have anything to add to that?
I think I fully agree with Andreas. I do feel that the current attention and the ongoing efforts on revising the outer space regulations has not taken enough perspectives of ethical aspects. But I guess Andreas has explained that very well. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I totally agree with Dr. Andreas regarding when the lawmaking fails, ethics should stand up, be there, be the motive, and be our way to act, especially with the private actors today. They are the newcomers into this dominion, and they bear this ethical obligation to keep space sustainable for the future generation and for us also. The second question is, will our understanding of space exploration, space sustainability help better tackle sustainability challenges on Earth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can try to answer that. So I guess that is definitely relevant. So having spent years on a very competitive and intense conflict across different sectors and different issues on Earth, we are now entering into a new territory, right? And just in the very beginning, we are already seeing this sort of conflicting and competing interest. So it is, from that point of view, it is a very critical point in time to really question now as we step into this new territory, what kind of economic models or governance models we are bringing into this new territory. Can it be more sustainable compared to what we have done in the last decades? Can it be more inclusive? So in other words, what we are about to do in space sort of serve as a test bed of how we are about to deal with this sort of environmental and social crisis on Earth. So if we could find more innovative and more radical model as we bring our activities into space in a new space competition form, we can definitely revise what we have been doing and what we are trying to do on Earth. But this is definitely a very big question which I cannot answer, and social science research have to continue their job. But I guess it is an important question to reflect on.
Yeah. Dr. Andreas, would you like to add to Dr. Shan's answer?
Well, just maybe that's also the other way around, that I think we can learn from sustainability challenges on Earth for space. And the thing that's most important to learn is just to take care about it. I mean, on Earth, it took some decades to get into the discussion and get it growing and make it more than just a buzzword. And in space, things are not as messed up as on Earth, to put it frankly, not yet. And we need to take care that it doesn't happen, because there's only one space environment. There's a lot of space, but the environment of Earth is unique, and we need to take care about that.
Yes, true, true. Yes, I think Andreas is right. So we have had environmental scientists, we have had social scientists or development scientists over so many decades working on the problems of Earth, and this is also what I am trying to bring to the table. What can we learn from the existing challenges? Can we sort of replicate or innovate on these existing models as we try to understand the current outer space challenges? Yeah, so I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The third question is, would it help to add an SDG 18, space environment, or similar to the United Nations agenda? And this is for you, Dr. Andreas, because actually I've been following your work for so long, and you're the one who is talking a lot about SDG 18, and I'm with you, of course. Can you tell us about it, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the idea to, if we have the 2030 agenda, to have space on the agenda as well. And that would be, because when there is like space for an 18th SDG, and it's, I think the one thing missing in all the aspects that are shown by the Sustainable Development Goals is space, the space environment. And there are several initiatives in that regard. I'm not the only one proposing it. That's very good. I just think that what's most needed is to regard the environmental aspect, because that's, we have environment of water, earth, and atmosphere, but not of space in the SDGs. That's why I call it like this. There's another proposal calling it Space for All, which is also very good, I think. Well, as I told you why I prefer the way I did, but I think most important is not how we call it actually, but that we discuss about it and integrate it in the discussions, in the political discussions as well.
Yes, if I may just add a little bit. Yes, so I also totally agree with Andreas that we have to, in whichever form, we just have to start talking about it. And one way is that when we say if we want to develop a new SDGs just focusing on space, again, it could seem rather distant to many people. And because of that we have to really make people aware and establish this Earth space sustainability paradigm in them, that we have to protect the outer space environment like we protect the rest of the SDGs is equally important. And one core element is that do not forget the potential of space technologies today as an enabler to attain all or many of the other sustainable development goals. So it is really interrelated, it is really important, and I guess that message has to be delivered in order to really legitimize that outer space sustainability is a real problem. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I totally agree. It's integrating SDG 18 within the agenda, Sustainable Development Goals agenda. It's very important because actually when we get the scope of the goals agenda, widen it to integrate the space in it, we will also have the other pillars of the sustainable development concept, which is the economic and the social ones and institutional one within one agenda, which is very, very important. Han, do we have still time to get some questions from the audience, or we wrap it up here?
Unfortunately not. We are right on the dot, 44 minutes. Thank you everyone for your attention, and stay safe and have a beautiful holidays, everyone.